Hi friends, as uncertainty over Ukraine grows in the wake of Russia's invasion, the rest of the world, along with the US and the European Union, is getting extremely anxious. The effects have begun to show on the global market to the extent that even our country is facing the brunt of it. Amidst these developments, US President Joe Biden in a recent press conference compared Russia to the former USSR, the erstwhile superpower with which US was engaged in a prolonged ideological battle. In 1991, after the disintegration of the USSR, the world was convinced that a coalition like the Soviet Union would never emerge again. However, Putin seems to have proved it all wrong. With the invasion of Ukraine, the Russian president has not only given the world a glimpse of the spirit of USSR that dwells in modern Russia, but also a sneak peek to its future. But is Russia really going to emerge in the former version of the USSR that was last seen in 1991? Will this world again be a witness to the fight between capitalism and communism in the neoliberal era? And will only Putin be at the forefront of this conflict? In today's video, we are going to answer these questions. Through this discussion, we will explore how Putin tried to transform Russia while leading its government. We will also discuss the domestic and international policies implemented by Putin that remind Joe Biden of the former USSR. So let's get started. Friends, it is possible that world leaders today are interpreting Putin's domestic and international policies as attempts to resurrect the USSR, but probably it took them a while to understand Putin, who has been very clear about his ambitions from a very long time now. Putin was born in Leningrad in 1952. This was a time when the USSR was enjoying its golden years. It has also won the Second World War. Sputnik, hydrogen bomb, Yuri Gagarin, all of them were a testament to the USSR's worldwide appeal. In 1956, Hungary crashed, and then in 1968, Czechoslovakia. This was an era when Soviet citizens extolled its glory. But after the disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1991, everything changed. When Putin took up the reins of power, Russia was far removed from the erstwhile Soviet Union in which he worked as a KGB spy. When he assumed control of this vast nation, it was plagued by economic crisis, widespread corruption, and international backlash, among other crises. Putin was very clear when he declared that the image of the USSR was still fresh in his mind. In 2008, Putin had famously said that if he had to alter the history of modern Russia, he would reverse the collapse of USSR. Putin has time and again used the example of defeat of Nazi Germany at the hands of the Soviet Union in World War II in order to build up a new Russian identity. Putin's idea of reversing the collapse of Soviet Union resonates with millions of older Russians who still lament over the loss of USSR. These are the Russians who still take pride in the global recognition and the social justice-oriented domestic welfare system that the USSR enjoyed. What has been troubling Western observers is that the number of USSR-loving Russians has been steadily rising under Putin. After coming to power, Putin has taken every opportunity to lament the fall of the Soviet Union that is still a blot on his mighty nation's history. Last year in December, Putin in an address to the nation compared the collapse of Soviet Union with the historical death of Russia and shared his personal experiences of surviving through the economic crisis that followed in its wake. In his address, he added that with the fall of the USSR, nearly 25 million Russians lost touch with their land and became a part of the newly independent republics, and that this is no less than a humanitarian tragedy. In Putin's vision of the future, Russian language, history, and culture should prevail. With regard to the European Union, Putin has often made his stand clear that other ex-Soviet republics should again come back to the Russian fold. Apart from this, Putin has also restored a number of Soviet-era symbols. Soviet national anthem and Soviet emblems have been popularized to fuel nationalistic impulses. All these make it pretty clear how much Soviet Russia meant to Putin and how desperate he is to bring it back. Most of these are just verbal initiatives concerning minor changes. However, since coming to power, Putin has also taken certain steps that could lead Russia to the path of the USSR. Let's first look at his domestic policies. When Putin became the president, his homeland Russia had changed a great deal from what it had been when he was young. Or in Putin's words, it had become far less respectable. And it was through his domestic policies that Putin tried to regain this respect. Back then, Chechnya was a symbol of the collapse of Soviet Russia. The Chechnya conflict was going on for a long time, and after Boris Yeltsin failed to put an end to it, the responsibility passed on to Vladimir Putin. With his policies and military strategies, Putin was finally able to bring Chechnya under Russian control. While Russia had to face a number of terrorist attacks during this period, Putin made sure that he dealt with the local revolutions with an iron hand. Hundreds of soldiers lost their lives in Chechnya. Thousands of civilians died, and Western governments and human rights groups accused Putin of violating international law. But in the end, he was able to restore Russian prestige in Chechnya, and today the region is under a leader appointed from Moscow. Putin also rejected the influential role of oligarchs in Russian economy and domestic politics. During the leadership of Boris Yeltsin, these oligarchs had established their control on the government, something that Putin was not ready to accept. Putin's first target was the oligarchs who controlled media assets. In 2003, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the richest man in Russia then, was arrested by the law enforcement agency on charges of fraud. Besides, Putin dismembered the oil company owned by Khodorkovsky and acquired it as a state property. To secure his authoritarian regime, Putin kept a tight grip on the parliamentary elections of 2003, thereby enabling his party to win by 2/3 seats. While Putin attributed his win to the strength of Russian democracy, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe alleged that the results were distorted. Even after all this, with the help of constitutional reforms in 2020, Putin declared himself as Russia's irreplaceable ruler. Although Western powers have been commenting on Russia's rise, Vladimir Putin has always insisted that he is no ordinary politician who is just interested in ruling Russia, but wants to change the country at every step. Now let's look at Putin's external policies. It was in 2008 that Putin was able to impact international politics when he sent Russian troops to Georgia without consulting the European Security Council. Russia had openly supported the insurgents in the war between Georgia and Russia, and the Russia-backed self-proclaimed republics of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. With its action, Russia invoked its role as the former USSR, which could not abandon its allies. Next, during the Arab Spring, when the US tried to help the revolutionaries in North Africa and Middle Eastern countries in dislodging the pro-Russian leaders, Putin sent his forces in the support of his long-term ally Bashar al-Assad in Syria. With this, Putin sent a strong message to USA and the Western Bloc that they could no longer hurt Russia in international politics. It is because of Russia's backing that Assad still remains Syria's ruler. Russia obviously justifies its actions in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin's objective is to maximize Russia's power in order to protect its domestic and international interest. Ukraine was the largest of 15 Soviet republics, and Putin claims that the Ukrainians are an integral part of Russian history and culture. Except Russia, Ukraine is still today the largest country in Europe. Tension between Ukraine and Russia started to grow in the late 1990s, when NATO began expanding in Russia's neighborhood. While US and NATO argued that independent nations had the freedom to choose their alliances, Russia alleged that the US was trying to deploy its missiles and war machines along Russia's border on the pretext of NATO's expansion. This is the reason why Russia captured the region of Crimea in Ukraine back in 2014 and backed the pro-Russian separatist forces in their fight against the Ukrainian army. Just a few days ago, Russia made its stand clear by recognizing Donetsk and Luhansk as independent countries after they were captured by Russian separatists. The ongoing Russia-Ukraine crisis leaves no doubt about Putin's vision that he would not tolerate and compromise with the security of his country. As Russian troops invade Ukraine, Belarus has agreed to support the invasion by contributing its troops. However, despite all this, the rival of the former USSR seems unlikely. What could be possible though? That Russia would emerge as USSR 2.0 is a commanding role among its former allies. Moreover, the increasing polarization of the world could lead us to a new kind of Cold War in which, besides US and Russia, countries like China, Ukraine and North Korea would also play a major role. So my friends, this was an analysis based on a possible rise of USSR 2.0. What's your opinion on this analysis? Do comment below. And if you have liked the video, don't forget to share it with your friends. We will meet in next video. Till then, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.